Welcome back to SledgeHammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and today I am so stoked to announce I have David Thornton. You know him as Art the Clown in the Terrifier series. David, how you doing today, man?
Doing awesome, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thank you again so much for doing this. This is so epic. I'm so excited. So Terrifier, Art the Clown. We were just talking to something I want to bring up. One of my favorite scenes in that whole movie is you get stabbed in the foot, and you totally give the girl the bird, and it's one of the funniest things in the world. And what I didn't know is that that was a totally improv scene. Are you cool talking about that, or?
Oh yeah. That whole moment right there was just pure improv. I was just joking around on set with Samantha Scafidi that played Victoria, because we're like okay, they had yelled cut, and like okay, let's do it again. So she's coming back in. So I'm like fuck, we gotta do this again. And I just gave her the bird, and the whole crew just started dying laughing. So Damien was going back through the footage when he was editing everything. He's like, man, this got the crew laughing so hard. He's like, I got to put that in the film. That's just too. It's because he said he never even thought about Art giving someone the bird. He said that just seemed too contrived.
Sure.
It was just something that happened so organically. He's like, that was funny. We got to keep that in there. So.
And thankfully you didn't talk or something like that when you did it, because that kept it in character of Art the Clown as well.
Yeah. It was just one of those happy little accidents, I guess you could say. So it's like,
yeah,
that was a crazy scene to do, because I was really suffocating her with that plastic wrap, and so I felt sorry for her having to do all that over and over and over and over and over. So it was like, oh god, because she had a whole signal for me. Like if she started rapidly just wailing on my arm, I knew to ease off of pulling that over her face so she could breathe and everything. So it was that, and the reaction where I after she tears through the thing where she's trying to get the spike to go through my foot. I'm like, what am I going to do during this while she's trying to get this spike? And so that was one of those things I came up with. I was like, oh, I'm just going to inspect the thing. Like, what the heck? This has never happened before. That always gets a laugh. I was like, well, I had to do something to fill in that time. And I was like, oh, well, this works, I guess.
Especially like you said, you guys are filming such heavy scenes right there. And, you got to keep it light on set so that way you're not wanting to really kill each other and go nuts. Yeah. So I could see the fun that you have, just even when you're sitting at the table and you're doing the. I love that shit, man. It was so It was so cool.
That's my favorite stuff to do, and it's just because Damien just let me play around and stuff like that. And when he first cast me in Terrifier, we didn't know each other before that, so he didn't know that's how I am as an actor. I like to just play around and experiment. And so he didn't write scenes like that. It was just one of those things like, why don't you just give me some options? Because it just said in the script he makes some faces or something like that. And so he just let the camera roll. So when we came to Terrifier 2, he deliberately wrote some scenes in there where he wouldn't even say what I do. He's just like, and Art just goes wild. Right. And so it's one of those things it's like once we get on set, we'll just let you look around at what you have on set and stuff like that and let you just come up with your own routine. And I'm like, cool. And so that was kind of fun. So there are a few scenes in Terrifier 2 where I just totally got to just improvise and play around like that. And it was a lot of fun.
And that shows the trust that he has in you as an actor, that he can write the script around what he knows you're capable of doing. So that's a cool story to hear, man. I really enjoy you telling me that stuff. I love behind the scenes stuff. Anything behind the scenes, I'm a huge sucker for. So it's so cool to hear this stuff.
That's what I love about it. It's just it's such a collaborative effort with all of us, not just between Damien and I. I mean, there's a lot of that too, of course, but it's just how that's how it is on set with the whole entire crew. Even if crew members come up with something, we're like, yeah, let's give that a shot, see how it goes, because we all want it to be the best it can be. So if someone has an awesome idea, we'd love to hear it, and we're like, cool, let's try that out.
And one thing I really love about Art the Clown is when you have other clowns, I don't want to bring up any other films, but they're usually so over the top with their laughs or their dialogue. This guy, no dialogue at all. And I think that as a clown with no dialogue, that makes it even scarier to me. You expect a clown to be, you know, joking and laughing. The only thing he does even really remotely close is when he's honking the horn, you know, like stuff like that. So he's still funny, but in a creepy way. There's no over the top to him. So I absolutely adore it. You touched on Terrifier 2 a little bit. I know things have been kind of crazy with COVID, but can you give us any type of update on where we're at on that?
Yeah, we're almost done. I mean, we were actually almost done back in March when everything had to go into lockdown. But you know, we had luckily just finished filming this big, huge, epic week-long filming of a set piece that we had. It's about a 10-minute long sequence in the film, and it's a lot of stunt work and stuff like that. So we got that all done literally the week before we had to go into lockdown. So we're very happy we got that finished, because that's the one scene that we were so worried about filming, because it's so complex, and it ended up being like the most fun scene that we filmed the whole entire time, and went the easiest. We're like, wow, this is the one we were stressing over, and this the most complicated stuff, and it went off without a hitch. It's all this easy stuff that we thought we were going to be like, oh, this took a whole entire 2 days instead of like a half a day to film. We're like, my God. So it's funny how that goes sometimes, but we got that done. So we're just finishing up small little like inserts here or there. And then I have my last big, huge kill scene that I'm finishing up this month too. We had to wait for the temperature to change, because it's just too hot to film with the makeup, because I just start sweating. You know, my mask will just come on down. So it's like, yeah, you know, that's just the things you have to do, you know, when you don't have a big, huge, like, you know, studio that you're actually in that has, you know, millions of dollars where they can afford air conditioning and everything like that.
And you want a perfect product. You know?
Yeah, and that's especially how Damien is too. He's like Mr. Perfectionist on set. He will do multiple takes until he gets it just perfect. He's very Kubrickish in that way. So I joke about it all the time. It's like, Dame, you're having a Kubrick moment, man.
Which, you know, I'm sure it could be. I don't know. I've never been on set, so I can't really speak from experience. But talking to a lot of you guys, I can see where that would be stressful on set. But when you watch that finished product, you got to have that pride of.
And that's the thing, is like he will have those moments, and like especially when I was doing Terrifier 1, I was like, what the heck, man, why are we doing this again? And then when I see the final product, I'm like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah. I totally get what he's doing. It's just like, that's the thing, is just, you got to trust the guy. He knows, he has his vision. He knows exactly how he wants it to look. And it might not make a lick of sense there in the moment, but when you see the playback, you're like, oh my God, that looks amazing. God, he's got a natural gift when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And before we get into your first horror movie, which is what we're here to talk about, I got to let you know that one of my all-time gnarliest kills comes from Terrifier, the Saw kill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, watching that, you know, I remember when I watched it for the first time, my wife was like, oh, he's not gonna. I was like, oh, he's gonna. And then, yeah. For those of you that haven't seen the movie, please check out Terrifier. It's such a great movie. Such a great interpretation of a true sociopath. He'll want to marry you 1 minute and want to saw you from vagina to face the next. So make sure you're checking this film out. So good. The head jack-o'-lantern is amazing. Oh, yeah. Looks so good. We did
it before Halloween.
Yep. And it looks so good, man. Like, it just the reaction on the cook's face. And another thing I like about this movie is when he's cleaning the bathroom. You know, he's like, "Oh, make the cook do this. That's real sanitary." You know, like, just those one-liners like that are delivered so perfectly.
Oh my God, it's like Damien is like I said, he's total natural, because he didn't go to school for any of this stuff. He's just like self-taught. And I think he really upped his game even in the sequel with the writing, especially with the dialogue. It's just like he just writes how people actually talk. It's not that contrived, you know, like dialogue that you see in a lot of horror movies, especially. It's like, yeah, it actually sounds like best friends talking or coworkers talking. It's just like, my God, it's just, I love it. I love it. He's just, I'm so happy that he's able to get this recognition now for these skills that he has.
Mm-hmm. Well, even the situations that he puts characters in are extremely realistic. I'm studying for this midterm. There's no way I can do this. Insert drunk roommate and boyfriend. I'm on my way. I don't want to be any part of this. So, I mean, even those situational things like that who hasn't been in that at least that type of situation?
Literally,
I can't do anything right now. Oh shit! No, nope, I'm on my way.
Yeah, I don't want to be in this room out there. Yeah.
Right. So, again, thank you so much for talking to us about Terrifier. Any updates you get about Terrifier 2, please let me know so I can spread the word. I'm so stoked for this. Do we have maybe a tentative? Are we aiming for like end of 2020, or is it going to be more towards summer 2021?
I think it's going to be like early mid 2021. That's what we're hoping. It just all depends on everything and stuff like that, and especially distribution. That's the biggest thing. It's like we haven't really solidified our distribution yet, and so we're looking at options. I think like one option we're actually exploring is doing a road show, taking around the U.S. to different theaters, and like kind of like how Kevin Smith did the latest Jay and Silent Bob film.
Sure.
Because I don't really know if we would be actually allowed in like mainstream theaters nationwide, given our subject matter, because I think in the first 5 minutes alone in the movie, we would probably get an NC-17 rating just on the violence. So it's just like, yeah.
Now you got me even more excited, man.
Oh, yeah. That was like when we were filming that scene, it was just like, Damien, like, I just take my first whack at my victim, and Damien's like, Dave, if this was a Friday the 13th movie, that would have been the whole entire kill right there. And I'm like, you're totally right. we got like so much more to do. This kill.
Thanks, man. I'm so excited.
We don't pull back. It's like, oh my God.
Well, I mean, the first one's brutal. I mean, that is a brutal movie. And it's, I mean, even the kick, I love the kicking scene. The fear you see, it's just so good. You guys, it was such a well acted movie too. It's one of those movies that there's a big reason why it has the cult following that it has.
I think that's what it is because it's a horror film made by horror fans for horror fans. And we know, I mean, Damien is like the true horror fanboy. He's literally named after Damien from The Omen. He was watching horror films when he was like 2 or 3 years old. So this has been a lifelong obsession of his. He loves this. He knows the most obscure horror films. And it like that will drive me crazy at times because we're coming up with ideas for kills, and I'll come up with an idea and he's like, oh, this happened in this film I've never heard of. And I'm like, who's even seen that film? That was released in some like Eastern European nation, and you know about this. And it's just like, oh my God! But he doesn't want to copy over, after other people. So it's just like he wants it to, or if he does take something from other people, he wants to do his own thing with it.
Yeah, put his own spin on it.
Yeah, and that's what he's doing with this. It's like he wants to actually show the kills happening. He is like, because so many slashers, they don't show the kills. They show the before and they show the after, but they don't actually show the real kill happening.
Yeah. And
that's his bread and butter there. He loves the gore. He loves doing his practical effects and showing what he can do. And that's what's so much fun about this. Like he builds these things, and it's like we're doing the old school, blood and tubes and stuff like that, with someone on the other end just going into a tube to shoot the blood out, and we have to do multiple takes just to get it right, and we're all drenched in blood by the end of the day, but it looks amazing. And I think that's why the fans love it so much, because you can see the love that's been put into it.
Well, and all old school horror fans especially, we're all big on practical effects, and I think that's why we've talked about it on the show before, but why The Thing 2011 didn't receive quite the accolades that a lot of people thought it would, because of all the CGI in it, compared to The Thing, which is like the main staple of practical effects. So when I go into a horror movie, that's one thing I always look at, is the practical effects versus the CGI. I'm not anti-CGI, but I'm anti-over CGI. And so movies like this, where there's just practical
it's like
effects,
CGI is so good awesome to use. Yeah. Well, I believe like CGI is good to use to like enhance things that you
Mhm.
can't necessarily do with practical effects. So like if you can do practical effects, do practical effects first. If you can't, then do the CGI on top of that.
Mhm.
But do as much with practical first, I would say.
Yep, I'm right there with you. That's something 100%. While we're talking about practical effects compared to CGI, let's get into the first horror movie that you ever watched. So the first horror movie that you ever watched growing up was
Poltergeist.
beautiful choice. God, that's such a. I've talked about this before. That's such a good movie to start with, man. It's so dark. It's so scary. How old were you when you watched it? Do you remember?
I was probably about like 3 or 4 years old, I would say, because it was right after it came out on VHS.
Okay.
And my parents were having a watch party at the house with their friends, and I was supposed to be in bed, and I snuck out of bed, and I was watching the movie. I pulled up a chair and I started watching the movie over this little counter or something like that we had, and so I saw most of the movie, and it got. I think it was like I think it was like the clown scene freaked me out. That scared the crap out of me, and I think that's when my parents realized I was awake because I was like, ah!
What an iconic scene too, because I was going to ask you, Art the Clown, first Poltergeist. Was there any influence of Poltergeist, do you think, on your portrayal of the smile with Art the Clown? Because that's something that even with that clown from Poltergeist.
Yeah. I wouldn't really say that was Poltergeist. I would say that was more like The Man Who Laughs or The Joker. That was the big influence there for that smile because that's who Joker was based off of was the movie The Man Who Laughs. Like Conrad Veidt's character because he had that big, huge rictus grin on his face.
See, and I've never seen The Man Who Laughs, so this is
Yeah.
something that I'm going to have to check out.
Yeah, it's like you will totally see where they got the whole look for the Joker from for that. It's fantastic. It's a great he was a great like silent film actor too. So that's also a great way to look at it too. It's like that's where a lot of the silent the acting for art came from was because it was influenced by silent films.
Okay, I could totally see that too.
Hmm.
Gosh, it's so cool looking back on this now, because now that you say it, I could totally see an Art the Clown silent film.
Yeah.
Like that, that's something I could totally see being pulled off and pulled off really well.
It would be fun. It's like there's a whole routine that I want to eventually do in a Terrifier movie that it's my own take on a classic silent film routine that I am dying to pull off someday. And we're just trying to figure out where we could put that into a future film. But it's like that's a goal of mine because I would love to do an homage to this one famous silent film. Well, not really
Okay.
silent film, black and white film with a very famous silent comedian, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I know you don't want to spoil too much. Well, let me ask you this: if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. We'll go back to Poltergeist in a second.
Hmm.
Is Terrifier 2 the last in the series, or will we get?
No, no, we want to do more. At least we have a third film in mind. We actually had it actually got cut from Terrifier 2, and we decided it would probably work better in Terrifier 3. So I think that's how we want to begin Terrifier 3. And we know how we want to begin Terrifier 3, and we know how we want to end Terrifier 3. We just got to figure out everything in between right now. But
Right.
we're right now more focused on Terrifier 2. But once we're done with that, then we can really think of like, okay, what are we going to go with these characters? And I think that will be like more of a collaborative effort between myself and Damien and some other people involved in the film. He was like, because he likes to bounce ideas off of people. He doesn't want to just
Sure.
come. So that's like I said, he's big in collaboration.
Man, I'm so stoked. I'm glad that it's not ending at Terrifier 2. Like that's
Oh
something
God,
that
no.
I'm so excited about.
Oh yeah, no. Because this is I think Terrifier 2 is like I kind of look at Terrifier 1 as Art's kind of origin story in a lot of ways, his introduction. Terrifier 2, I mean, Art's front and center the whole entire time. Don't worry about it. But it's more. the introduction to the heroine this time. So it's her origin story. So
Okay.
and so like I guess you could say Terrifier 3 is where those two characters are really going to, duke it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you got the bread for Terrifier 3. We're just looking for the meat for the middle now.
Exactly.
Cool. Cool, man. I'm so excited. And I'm already excited for Terrifier 3, and I haven't even seen Terrifier 2 yet. So, it's one of those situations. So, man, best of luck
very
to that.
exciting. Thank you.
So, you were talking about the clown scene from Poltergeist.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, which scene from Poltergeist affected you the most? Do you think that was the one that got you the most?
I would say not really that scene. I would say as a kid, the one that really got me, because there's a funny story involved with it, is the whole scene where she's sucked into the TV.
Sure.
That really freaked me out in a lot of ways, because you'd never seen anything like that before either. That was like extremely creative. Like, my God, what a brilliant idea! I mean, there's so many great scenes, and they're like just like the whole thing with the all the dead bodies down there, and like, oh my God, God, that's still like, especially knowing that those are actual dead bodies that they used. It's like, oh my God. But I would say that the TV scene, because my mom, when I was a kid, I used to sit right in front of the TV and block the TV. Especially when my mom was watching her soap operas, or as she called them, her stories. Yeah, got to watch my stories. Every day she had to watch her stories in the afternoon. Mama's stories are on.
Yeah.
Got fed up with it. And she's like, David, you know what's going to happen if you keep sitting in front of the TV like that. You know that little girl in Poltergeist? She got pulled into the TV. That's real. That's going to happen to you too. And I'm like, oh no. And so I used to, like, anytime the TV was on, I would take like I would like circumnavigate the TV, give it like a good like 3 or 4 foot arc. I would not get near it. I was so afraid for a few years of just getting. It worked. It worked. That psychological work. I'm like, my mom was. She did that kind of stuff all the time. She did the same thing to me when I was a kid, and when I'd pick my nose and eat my boogers, as like every kid does at that age. She's like, those are worm eggs. And if you eat them, you're going to have worm eggs in your stomach, and then they're going to hatch. And then you're going to have worms in your stomach, and then you got to get your stomach pumped.
Oh, my gosh. Dude,
Yeah.
Your mom sounds awesome.
Oh, she was awesome. She was awesome. I loved her. She was just the best. I wish she was still around now, because it's like she was such a chicken when it came to horror films. I can only imagine what her reaction would be to me, because she always supported everything I did, like every show. She was always at every show I performed in. Usually, front and center, or she was working at the house, as a house manager or something. She was always involved. So I imagine she would actually suffer through Terrifier if she was still alive, just to see me. She would just sit there with her hands over. She's like, "Tell me when I can look."
Right. What are these?
Yeah.
I get it, man. My mom passed away suddenly last year. I have her around my neck all the time, man. So I definitely get that. So that's one of the things with this I talk about it. I think that I think she's looking down right now, just like stoked that this stuff is happening. And I think it's awesome your mom was teaching social distancing to you at such a young age, distancing you from that TV. Mama knows everything, man.
Yeah, Mama knows best. Mama knows best. Especially those Southern mamas. I grew up in Alabama, so just like someone recently released this meme on Facebook with this black grandmother in church, and she's got a spatula in her hand, and she's just turning around and like glaring at. You can only assume as a kid, like she's kind of like, I'm like, oh, I know that look very well from my grandma. I was just like, my grandmother had that wooden spoon too, and you saw that look on the face. You're like,
yep.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. For
me, it was a shoe. When Grandma got the shoe.
Oh yeah.
That's so. It's funny how you can see stuff like that people look at as a joke, and we laugh about it, but at the same time, we had that inner fear. When I see that a picture like that, I literally hear in my head Kenneth Ray. It's like
you hear the middle name, you're in trouble. It's like, oh no, David Howard. I'm like, oh God, I'm dead.
Kenneth Ray. And it's funny because my son is Kenny the Fourth, so I get to use that now. So I'm like, that's how that felt from this side.
Oh yeah, it is like it's the fear of God, and like I said, like that's how my grandmother was too. Like just how my grandmother, I think my mom learned that psychological warfare from my grandmother. Because this is like one of my favorite stories of my grandma. Because you know what switches are, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For those that don't know, switches are like little sticks with thorns on them, and they're used
They-
for like disciplinary reasons.
and you
And
have to choose them yourself.
oh yeah, and that's what my grandmother said. She's like, David, because I can't remember what I did. I must have done something bad, knowing me. And and she's like, pick your switch off the switch tree. Now I will preface this by saying she never once hit me with one of those things. She never had to, and it's because of this moment. Because I go to pick it, and I thought I was being smart. I was being a little smart ass. I came back a little twig like this big. Now here you go. And she's like, oh no, 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 no. I'm gonna go pick your switch now. I'm like, okay, oh no. And I see her just disappear around the house. And she's gone for a few minutes. And I'm like, that's when I start sweating bullets. I'm like, oh God. Oh no, what happened? And then I see her little face pop from behind the side of the house. And she's got this just evil, maniacal grin on her face. And she's like, David! I'm like, uh-oh. And then she comes out and she's dragging this big, giant tree limb behind her that was bigger than her. And she's like, come on out. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was like, yeah. That's all she had to do. I told that. I was like, I thought she was gonna. I didn't understand, she couldn't lift that thing. But as a kid, I'm like, I thought my grandmother was gonna go Super Saiyan on me and just wail on me with that giant tree limb. And I'm like, oh God.
When you said that she peeked her head around the corner with a grin, I just picture her peeking around with like an Art the Clown, like.
Yep, that's pretty much what it was. That's all.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, oh my God.
Oh,
It's
that's so cool, man.
brilliant.
It's like you said, it's one of those things where that's universal. Because I think that's happened to all of us. We try to be a smart ass.
Yeah.
I'm on the unlucky end where my dad had he made leather, and
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah, he had hide, so I didn't have a choice on that one. It was just the
Oh,
hide,
yeah.
and we knew, we knew
Mhm.
when it was time to shut up.
Oh yeah, that's my dad too. He never once had to hit me with it. He just would take off his belt and crack it, and I'm like, "Ah!" And I'm like, yes sir, sorry, sir, sorry, sorry, sorry. That's the thing. It's like my parents hardly ever had to actually spank me.
Mhm.
It's just that fear of the
Fear of
punishment.
God.
It's just like because they did the spanking maybe once or twice, and after that's all I had to know. Because like my mother was a teacher, and she was retired though by the time she had me. That's why she retired. But she had her paddle from back in the day when she paddled, and she had holes drilled in it, so it
Drilled
had
holes.
less wind resistance, and she had signatures on it. She had every student that she paddled sign it, so you saw that thing, and she would just, whew, you would hear that, whew, she would just, and
Yeah.
like, I never once got hit by that thing, but just that sound, I'm like, oh no.
Well, you're talking about the belt crack. When you're a kid and you hear that belt crack, that sounds like a bomb dropping.
It does. It's like a gunshot going off. It's just like, ah,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That's so. It's just funny how relatable this story is.
Yeah.
So, back to Poltergeist. I want to ask you: is this a movie that you said you watched it at that young age? Is this something you continued to watch, or was it one of those things where you watched it the once and it kind of scarred you and you were done with it?
I watched it once when I was a kid, but then like years later, I went back to watch it again, and then I didn't think it was nearly as scary as it was when I was a kid. I think like Poltergeist 2 was scarier in a lot of ways just because of the old man and that because he was just so freaky. He was
Reverend
so
Kane.
Reverend Kane, yes, that's his name. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just like and then when I read that he was actually dying from cancer when he was
Yeah.
filming that, I'm like, oh wow,
And then you go back
wow.
and you see it, like.
Oh, you
And
do see it.
see, to me, my personal favorite of the whole trilogy, the original three, is actually part three. I think that
Hmm.
that movie's obviously mired in sadness and controversy because of
Yeah.
Heather O'Rourke, and that it's so unfortunate what happened.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
obviously, the ending. You know how they had to kind of improv an ending to the movie, but Heather O'Rourke's acting in 3 is just so phenomenal, and she was going through that too. Like, she was on the medication, and you can see where her cheeks are all puffed up. And I don't know if you have watched it on Shudder, but they have cursed films. Have you watched that yet?
I haven't watched that, but I have watched actual cursed films, of course, Twilight Zone film. It was just like that whole story's like, oh my! I mean, I've watched the actual footage of the helicopter.
The helicopter that's on this cursed film show.
Oh my!
You got to check it out, man. Like, they do Poltergeist, they do The Omen, they do Twilight Zone. They show these, like you said, the helicopter. Any parent that watches that, heart has to explode in sadness when you see that helicopter scene from Twilight Zone.
It's horrifying and heartbreaking at the same time, because it's like you realize he was trying to save those kids' lives too, and he sacrificed himself trying to save them, but unfortunately he didn't even save their lives. It's like, oh my God.
And he's trying to it's past movie at this point. Like, this is real life. He's really trying to save these kids, and it's you're right, it's just so heartbreaking.
Oh my God. It's just, but to actually just see that actually happen too, it's just like, oh my God. It's just, it's like, it's one thing to watch fake kills happen in a horror film, because you have that disconnect in your head. You're like, oh, I know this is not real. They're actually fine in real life. But when you actually see I can't stand to see actual death. I cannot see that. Like the recent video they had of Kenosha with the first victim dying, I was just like, I had to turn it off. I'm like, I can't see this guy bleeding out. I'm just like, that's just, I can't.
It tears you apart as a human being to see any other human being go through something like that.
Yeah.
And like you said, especially something like that, I'm with you. Too heavy for me, man. I love my horror movies, but like you said, at the end of the day, they're going back home to their families. They're kissing their mothers. They're kissing their children. I don't have to worry about what's going on with them in the next life. Now with the real life death, I'm totally with you on that. Something I can't stomach to watch. I just can't do it.
I can't. I didn't know I was going to see that in that video. I was like, oh, no, I cannot watch this.
So we did talk about your first horror movie. I want to go scream on you here real quick. What is your favorite horror movie?
Oh boy, I don't really have a absolute favorite, because there's so many good ones, and it's just I have my top 5, but they're all completely different from each other too. So it's like, that's why I can't really compare them, because they're all great in their own way. It's in no particular order. It's original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors, the original Halloween, Exorcist, and The Omen. They're all just so good in their own way. And
Absolutely.
they stay with it. And that they still hold up to this day. Every single one of those films holds up.
Dude, and when you're talking about that, each one of those films, to me at least, has that one iconic moment that you will always remember no matter what. Nightmare 3, welcome to primetime, bitch. You know, and the ending of Texas Chainsaw.
Oh yeah. That and the dinner scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the one that really got me. That scene, when you think the grandfather's dead, you think that's a corpse there, and they stick the finger in the mouth, and I was like, oh my God. I was just like, oh, it's just, oh my God. And then you hear the story behind that scene of, like, here they were in that room for days. And that meat was all rotting. It's in the hot summer weather in Texas, and just like how just horrible of a situation that had been. And it's like, you watch that scene and it just looks so grimy and just disgusting too. So it is like, it works so well in that way. It just makes you just feel so uncomfortable.
100% agree.
So
and
good.
That's one of those movies too that a lot of people talk about how bad Texas Chainsaw is. When you go back and watch it now, it's actually a pretty toned down film when it comes to the violence.
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of blood and guts or anything, but
you really don't. But they get you with you think you've seen it.
It's like, yes, what you see in your mind compared to what you're seeing on the screen, your mind replays, especially the first time when you're a kid, your mind replays that movie so much more graphic and violent than you actually seen it.
Oh yeah.
But even like The Omen, you're talking about The Omen, it's all for you, Damien. Like that scene.
That is so messed up. That is so messed up. That just like, oh my God. That and the scene that also got me was just the scene in the cemetery with the hellhounds surrounding them.
Yes.
That was just like, oh, and then the decapitation scene with the plate of glass is just like, oh, or the spire coming off of the and shink right through. I'm like, there's just so much of that. It's just like, oh my god, it's such a good movie. And it's like and that's the thing with these films too. When they've done remakes of them, they're nowhere near as good, and they might try to do scene by scene, and it's just like, no, you just can't touch the original. It's like when
Sure.
I heard they're trying to do a remake of Exorcist. I'm like, no, don't.
There are some films that I do like the remakes of. I don't think the remakes are inherently bad, but
Yeah.
like Poltergeist was not a fan of the remake. The Omen was not a fan. Texas Chainsaw was not a fan. However, like Dawn of the Dead, I enjoyed that remake very much.
That was good.
Yeah, I also am a big fan. I get shit for it a lot, but I'm a big fan of the new Child's Play. I loved the new Child's Play.
I liked it, but not as a Child's Play movie.
I get what you're saying.
It's like I can't, because that to me that's not Chucky.
Right.
That's not Chucky's not an AI. He's not a rogue AI. I think they could have just come up with a totally original character, and I would have loved the movie.
Mm-hmm. See, and I've talked about that. If the Buddy Bear at the end would have been the character the whole time, I think the movie would have been a bigger success because of it.
Oh yeah,
because you're right. There's a lot of people that Chucky is Charles Lee Ray, and when I think of Chucky, I think of Ade, Dewey, Dembell. That's part of the stigma of what Chucky is. So I do get that. I completely understand how it's a great movie if it doesn't have Child's Play on it. The same way for me, I think that Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is the best Halloween movie. And if you made Season of the Witch without the Halloween 3 on it, I think we would have got sequels. I think it would have been a franchise. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it's a shame that sometimes the name of the movie is what has like ruined it for people because they were expecting this and they got something else. But I mean, in itself, it's a really good movie. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's just like, but I'm like, that's not Chucky. That's not, it's like, because I feel it has to be Charles Lee Ray because he has that motivation there, because he's like, he doesn't want his soul stuck in this freaking doll. He wants he needs a new vessel for his soul, and it's like, that's motivation right there for everything. I'm like, that's great. And it's such a creepy idea too, because it's like something that's supposed to be so innocent, and it's like, oh god. But it's also fun in its own way because it's so absurd seeing this little doll coming after you. And it's like, why would you be afraid of that thing? But then when you see it, you're like, oh, good God. Yeah. He's like charging at you with a knife. You're like, oh, God, kill it with fire.
Not today, Satan.
No, not today, Satan. Not today.
I do always end these with a skull count. Back to Poltergeist. We're ranking it on a scale, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. Where would you rank that on a skull meter?
I would say about 3.75.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Especially watching it back now, there is some of the stuff that actually looks kind of cheesy, but I'll tell you this, man. One of the scenes that scared me most in all of cinema history is "They're Here."
Oh God, yeah. That and the furniture just all of a sudden stacking itself on the table. That quick pan. It's like, whoa. It's just like, that's eerie stuff. I love that because that was like the first real like ghost like supernatural paranormal type movie, and it's like, like a lot of the ones that have come out since owe everything to that movie.
Oh gosh,
like Paranormal Activity, especially those films owe everything to Poltergeist.
It's funny watching how we've talked about this on the show before too, but like even like Poltergeist, The Exorcist, the mark that these movies have made. That they are so well done in their own way that all these other movies take so many different, almost scene by scene concepts from them and modernize them and try to make it their own. But when you watch them, you're like, oh, that's a total Poltergeist. So that's a total Exorcist move. And to be so appreciative of these old films and realizing that without those, we don't have what we have today. Even if you're not a huge fan of these old movies, Jaws is one that I talk about a lot. I feel like Jaws is the perfect example of what's going on in the world right now. We got a shark out there in the water, and we got the mayor telling us, oh, it's fine. Go get in the water. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay.
Yeah, I've seen so many memes of that too, where it's just like, it's totally fine. Like, no. No, you're making it worse.
Well, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, check out the description. Make sure you're following him on his social media. I got all the links down here in the description. Make sure you stay what you are. Keep talking horror, and we'll talk to you guys soon.